Yeah. And then the other expenditures on agriculture, fertilizer subsidy, which if we don't do, there will be no food security. Again, that is taking another 19 billion. So you see, you look at all this, yeah, you realize that we realistically don't have that leverage, that latitude in terms of cutting our expenditures. Therefore, Kenya Revenue Authority must perform. That's why we are putting a lot of reforms there, so that the only avenue we have, the only space, revenue. We must increase revenue without increasing taxes.
So without more borrowing, are you able to give update on that UAE loan? Will it be shared, or will you
Pardon?
The UAE loan, the 1.5 billion.
That one is long forgotten, my friend. You see, you are talking of history. That was a 2025 year.
Yeah.
We didn't take it. And there are other avenues. You can go Eurobond. We are right now borrowing money from Samurai bond. Samurai bond is almost just about 4-5%. It's much cheaper. So we don't just go for loan because it's available. We go for loans based on our own calculations and assessment and costing. So UAE loan is not our priority now. We will, if we feel we need it, maybe in future we may go for it, but for now it's not on the table. Two more questions. Yes, first, let me start you, Walter.
Thank you. Very quick, you've answered one of the questions, so this one will be very quick. But there is an uncomfortable question on who qualifies to file return. There is specific, especially on students and employed people also running small business, and the failure to file return, the consequences in terms of legal consequences on late file. Filing return is made easy. The opposite is true in equal measure. However, also the concern is based on declaration of multiple sources of income. So in all this, the pay as you earn has been synchronized, that everything is automated. Can this be done with the filing so that Kenyans don't jam the system? Thank you.
First, what makes it difficult to go that route is the informality of our economy. Our economy has a big chunk of it in the informal sector. So there is a limit to which you can even go with automation. But we are really trying to make sure that we automate most of our processes, and that is being done. You can see there is a big change in terms of automation and deploying technology. But in terms of who should file returns, anyone who qualifies to be a taxpayer, when you have a PIN number, personal identification number, you must file return. How would someone know you don't have income? Even students get income. You know, you do part-time jobs, you generate money. I mean, if you generate income, you should pay part of that income as tax, because that is the law. So anyone with a PIN number must file returns. If you have not made any income in the year, you file nil return. If you have made, file it and demonstrate that you have paid taxes. But if you make filing returns optional, then you run the risk of no one filing the returns at all.
But Waziri, the last one. So if issuing penalties is also, how is issuing penalties helping to generate revenue, or does it,
it enforces compliance.
Even people who
it enforces compliance. I will tell you, there are people, if you don't have penalty, they will not file return, even when they make billions. Even penalty for payment date, if you don't put it, people will wait until the end of the year. And the country must run. How could we run without money? If everyone was to wait for 30th June to bring, just imagine that. If all of us decide that now there is no law requiring you to pay as you earn on a particular date, or corporate tax at a particular date, or VAT at a particular date, that you can pay it anytime so long as it's in the course of the year. Everybody will wait for June, and from July to May, there will be no money to run the country. Then in June, we have all those billions. How will we absorb them? So that is why it is spread, that when you generate income, file returns, pay you. I mean, when you generate income, pay your income tax. And there is a date. And when the time comes for filing returns, file it. If you don't, penalty. That is what is enforcing compliance, by the way. Without that, there would be no compliance. Yes?
All right, so finally, Ozzy, I get to ask my question. The first one was rejoinder on CAFAs. So, and this is particularly on some of the proposals that seemingly are going to enhance KRA's in terms of tax collection. And this is particularly the amendments on the Tax Procedures Act and some of the proposals therein, particularly section 29. Some of the experts that I've been able to speak to on this.
Which clause is that? And that clause 42?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
On the tax procedures.
Yes.
Yes. So the argument that we are currently getting is that this then, what this will do is, if you have a system-generated revenue liability versus what I have personally declared, because the current system is that the taxes that we pay, our tax liabilities, is on voluntary declaration basis. However, they feel that if the revenue authority is going to be given access to all this data, there could be a mismatch between what is in the system and what I have declared, which then means it's going to complicate, in terms of my tax compliance, is going to be complicated, whether I run an SME or I'm doing businesses on the side.
So you are talking about the commissioner may, in accordance with the information obtained, in accordance with issue an assessment on the income of a person as he may deem necessary. Yes. The commissioner shall rely on the information submitted to the commissioner under section 35(5). First of all, let me make it very clear that this information, even as we speak, is with the commissioner. So take it from there. You know, sometimes when we see these amendments, we interpret them wrongly. Already the commissioner has all the legal framework to look for your information anyway from the financial records. You may not know, but they have that information. What this law is trying to do, my friend, is to ask the Commissioner General to stop being lazy. We are just telling the Commissioner General, please don't be lazy. You don't just sit at your towers there and wait for people to file their returns. You should pre-populate. You should go ahead and look and do an assessment on Mbandi. And it is an assessment. If I don't agree with it, I'll respond to Commissioner General and tell him, no, this is not my income, this is not my income, this is not my income. And I think that is what happens in most jurisdictions. It's only Kenya where we have relied heavily on self-assessment. It's like we voluntarily decide on what to pay and wait for Commissioner General now to do his own audit later. So what we are saying, instead of waiting to do audit later, why don't you go ahead, you have the powers, tell Mr. XYZ that this is the tax you are supposed to pay, send him a note, then that person will say, no, this is not my tax, and respond. That does not mean that is a tax liability already. He's only informing you that according to your records, this is what you should pay. Yeah?
Yes, so there was that one part. However, there's a line in there that says that the commissioner is sort of authorized to obtain information under any other written laws in Kenya. And some of these experts believe that this then could create a loophole of the KRA being a bit excessive in terms of their implementation and trying to enforce this compliance. However, the other part is that the amendment also proposes to empower the commissioner to issue agency notices during ongoing disputes. Currently, businesses are not required to pay that tax until the dispute is resolved. However, some of those amendments, there's a fear.
Yeah. In fact, your last one has been very unfair. That one, I hope I'm answering the same the question that you have asked.
Yeah.
That has been very unfair. You see, where KRA has assessed you and found that you should pay X as amount of tax, then you go and challenge it, and you lose the case. The mere fact that you have appealed, just appealing without getting an order, you cannot pay that tax even for 10 years. I think that is wrong. You are supposed to get explicit order to appeal the tax. Then, now it cannot be collected. But if you have not been able to convince the lawyers, and by the way, Rispa and Mwenda, if there's something you feel you should add, you just walk up here and you add. Yeah? Yeah, you can, Rispa, come and clarify. But I will tell you that if you look at our tax laws, they have really tied the hands of KRA, Commissioner General, so much that we should free. And it is benefiting people who don't want to pay taxes. And they are not they are not people with no capacity. They have the capacity, but they don't want to pay taxes. Rispa, come. Maybe you have understood him better.
Yes, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you, CS. Thank you, everyone. So just to clarify, to just really add on to what the CS has said, I think the underlying thing, what you said, was fear. Yeah? A concern. But as the law is, if you look at that very provision, it has just itemized the sources from where the commissioner will get this information. Before that, the law is wide. It actually says that the commissioner can get information from everywhere and anywhere as long as it is for tax purposes. So it is very prescriptive. Now, what the KRA has done is, having checked with other jurisdictions, when we ask them, how do you get this information so that you're able to analyze and assess? Because in our side, there'll be restrictions from the Data Protection Act, there'll be restrictions from different sources. Now, what these jurisdictions will tell us is, tax is not a private affair, in the sense that where you have earned income, then you should pay the taxes that follow.